Okay, I'm excited to do this video. Been wanting to do this for a while. I'm gonna try and just do it in one take, so we'll see how it goes. I got a bunch of notes and hope it's useful for whoever watches this. So my name is Brock Norton, and I just wanted to do this video on how my wife and I bought three rental properties in 2 months. But first, I wanted to start off with the why. And my biggest concern and impetus for doing this is inflation. So today's measure, we're annualized at 6.8%, whereas the government used to measure things differently back in the 70s and 80s. And so back in 1982, the peak of inflation, we were at 15%. The Federal Reserve Fed Chairman Paul Volcker, to fight inflation and encourage people to not spend money by incentivizing them to save their money with higher interest rates, had interest rates at 20%. So today, though, we are at 0% interest rates, and the Federal Reserve is only going to begin raising rates a few times starting this year. And by 2023, they're thinking that they won't even be above 3%. So that's a concern for me. And I wanted to show this screen real quick. So there's this site called Shadow Stats by John Williams, and he does exactly what I was just describing, where he measures inflation today, just like it was back in the 70s and 80s. And then, of course, he also has today's measure of inflation. So this bottom chart is the difference between the two. So the blue line is the old measure of how they used to measure it back in the 70s and 80s. And the red line is how they are measuring and reporting it these days. And so we're at 6.8%, but using the official measures based in 1980, we're right around 15%. So that was a concern for me and why I bought these rental properties. So feel free, and I'll share all these links and files that I have in this video in the description. So just go look there and you'll be able to look at all these things. Another person that I love listening to, his name's Peter Schiff. He has a podcast, and there's one in particular where he discusses inflation, and I'll link to that in the description below. Super smart guy. He's one of those people that predicted the 2008 housing crisis, and was one of those people that, like Michael Burry from The Big Short, he also bet against the housing market collapsing, and so for me that was a vote of confidence to continue to what he's talking about. He also did a podcast, and I'll link to this one as well, on what real estate investors like myself and others should be doing to during inflation. And there are a few key points. He says you want to make sure you have good cash flow. You want to make sure you have good tenants. So for those that are familiar with the class system, you wouldn't, in this scenario, necessarily recommend C-class properties that cash flow like crazy. And so instead, you might want a slightly better tenant class found in better, newer neighborhoods. So for me, I'm investing out of state. I live in Salt Lake City, but I'm going to invest in Memphis. And so for me, what that looks like is not investing in anything below $650 to $700 a unit at the very low end, because any lower than that, and you're just going to have not as stable of tenants. A third thing that you're going to want to do, and Peter talks about, is you want to lock in long-term debt. And his comment was, you'll make more money as a debtor than anything else. And this is big for me. I thought, man, it'd be nice to buy mining stocks, commercial real estate property, like large multifamily, precious metals, to take advantage of appreciation of those assets that will inevitably come with the currency crisis. Like, we're printing all this money. But with leverage, I could secure a lot more purchasing power via long-term mortgage debt in today's dollar. So the dollar amount I'm securing is $255,840 worth of purchasing power, which will be the mortgage balance on the 3 properties that I'm buying. To do that with 20% down, though, I need $63,960. And so what I tried to write out, and hopefully this makes sense, but if I bought precious metals, for example, in their physical form, I could use that down payment money of 63,000, but that's it. Like, I'd be missing out on leverage by going that route. And mining companies are the same way. You know, I could buy $63,000 worth of mining companies. And mining companies are nice. They do have a form of leverage on their underlying asset, the precious or base metals that they sell, because they have a fixed cost. But once those fixed costs are met, the variable profit that they make from increasing metals prices lends to massive margin gains, which is then, of course, passed on down to the owners and stockholders of the company in the form of like increased dividends and stock price appreciation. But with stock purchases, you lose a key component of investing, which is control. So I'd like to own a leverage asset, but but also be in control on how to disposition it. So hopefully for me, the biggest driver will be rent increases. And so I want to do 1-year leases, not 2-year leases, even though those are appealing, because with a 2-year lease, without like pre-contract agreement of rent increase after year 1, then I'd be missing out on rent increases to help pay down the debt. So let's see here. So then the next thing is with Peter Schiff and what kind of real estate to buy is you want to understand where the property is and the dynamics of how it would do during a dollar crisis. So another thing to consider is, would your home suffer during an increased housing supply due to people moving in with family and people renting out rooms? Now, I don't know as if we can get back to normal supply, even with people moving in and renting out rooms. When my wife and we were looking to buy a house in the city where we're at now, back in 2016, she told me there were about 60 houses for sale at any given time in the city where I'm at. And last I checked, there was 1 house available for sale. And so even if we doubled, tripled, quadrupled, quintupled the number of houses for sale, we'd be at 10, 20 houses. So I don't know as if in my city we'll have an issue there, but maybe other places there would. But something to consider as you're buying real estate. And then the last thing that he mentions is to try and buy real estate where it's cheaper to buy than to build due to construction costs, both labor and material going higher and higher. So as I was looking at Memphis, new builds in Memphis are often more expensive than existing homes, but not by much, but they are from what I can tell. So it was also weird for me to look at these new homes being built in Memphis, but they were built in old neighborhoods on empty lots that for some reason just never had anything built on it. And so you'd have this nice new house next to older houses, and not that the older houses were dumps, but they're just older. And so would a tenant mind that or not? I just wasn't sure. So I may pick up some though in the future, because then the capex, all the big expensive items like the roof and the windows and the furnaces, those are all done. And so, yeah, and it's just not that much more of a premium to buy a house like that. So another why I'm buying real estate right now is, and I mentioned this a little bit, but rent is going up. And I'll link to two separate articles, but on average, we're around 15% in rent increases. The first article that I'll link to shows single family houses in the last year gone up 13.9%. And the second article from Yahoo shows that we've had a single family house increase of 15%. So for all those Dave Ramsey people, just imagine being able to increase your debt pay down by 15% each year on your mortgage. And so for me, that was another big reason why I want to buy real estate. Another thing why I'm wanting to buy real estate is I'm just trying to look at what the smart money does, the big money. So people have heard of potentially companies like BlackRock and others buying up large chunks of real estate. And do they see what might be coming and also want to buy real estate with long-term debt for cheap right now? So what I'm going to link to is a video of how to short the dollar, i.e. bet safely with leverage that the dollar will continue to be printed into oblivion and become worth less and less with time, and how to do that with mortgages. So I'll link to this, but you'll want to start at 15 minutes and 10 seconds, and you'll watch through 20 minutes and 15 seconds of this video. And the guy that talks about this in this video, he and his family lived in Romania during the hyperinflation in the 90s. And he said one thing they did to avoid crushing poverty was to buy some real estate rentals and the cash flow that they received from that, because that cash flow maintains its purchasing power during hyperinflation, because you can increase rents. And so that was an important thing. That one, you'll start at 23 minutes and 12 seconds, and you'll watch through 30 minutes and 20 seconds. So what they did is, and I just have some notes here, is he said, we were buying rentals, and that's what got them out of crushing poverty, i.e. counting potatoes to see if they'd be able to make it through winter, to having inflation adjusted income that maintained its purchasing power. And I noted, I also learned from him that during the hyperinflation, long-term debt, i.e. 30-year mortgages like we have right now in the US, those will disappear. And he said his father-in-law paid off their house with a foreign currency salary that was just 3 months of that foreign currency salary. And I could see myself a scenario where with long-term debt that's locked in, people are paid in other currencies or cryptocurrencies or precious metals during a dollar crisis. And so if the dollar does have a hyperinflation, people that buy rentals might be able to use their salaries that are paid in other currencies to quickly pay off these mortgages. Another thing that I was figuring is like, why buy real estate? Like, how can I do this? And how many is like bare bones enough? I figured the numbers on the 3 properties that I have under contract, technically 2 now, since I closed on one this last Friday. But the 3 properties that I have under contract and what they would cash flow without a mortgage. And so the first one would be $796. The second one would be $662. And the third one would be $646 for a total of $2,105 each month. And so our family's monthly cash budget is comfortably, but not lavishly, for a family of 5 is about $2,000 a month. That's without a mortgage. And so I'm thinking, okay, if we have hyperinflation and my mortgage is paid off and the mortgages on these 3 rental properties are paid off, and we can continue to get cash flow and the purchasing powers maintained, then that will allow my family at least to get through this time frame if we end up going through it. And if we don't, and we just have sustained high inflation, then the mortgages will get paid off relatively quickly. Like I said, with that, 15% rent increases, like that'll help us pay those off relatively soon. And since I'm not ever planning on selling these, then the cash flow from them will be nice in the future too. I do, however, want to get one more rental to increase the cash flow so that it also starts to cover my personal residence's taxes and insurance. And so then we're really quite comfortable. Another why I'm buying real estate is a real estate personality, social media personality, Grant Cardone. He's a billionaire real estate investor and businessman. And this guy, actually, back in 2018, I was trying to wrap up a painting business and trying to find a full-time job. But in between then, I was considering doing flips, and he really was the one. I watched one of his videos and I'm like, that's it. I'm just doing it. But he helped me to decide to do flips back in the fall of 2018. And so, yeah, Uncle G's got a special spot in my heart. But I'm going to link to a couple of videos that I've watched recently that have helped me say, I just got to buy some rentals. Like, I got to do it, because this first one, he calls out inflation. He talks about Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, saying on his Twitter, hyperinflation is going to change everything. It's happening. And Grant goes on to say only a couple asset classes that protect you during hyperinflation are gold and silver, but there's only one that cash flows, and that's real estate. And for me, he has some street cred because he correctly identifies that of all the money that's ever been created in the last 18 months, they've created 40% of it. And he holds up this big old giant bag of cash, and he's like, this is just paper. They're printing more of it, so I need more of it to buy stuff. And so I like that video. And then the second video that he has, he just talks about why saving money, trusting banks, trusting Wall Street are all problems, and how real estate will protect you. So those are also big whys. Another why for me buying real estate, and I apologize if this is long, but I thought this was all important. Honestly, the reason why I'm buying real estate, but cash flow. If you haven't already read or listened to or watched, it's on YouTube actually, Robert Kiyosaki's book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I recommend it. He isn't welcomed by all and has views that aren't always popular with people, like buying Bitcoin, or like 401ks to him are a scam, or that your house is an asset when it's not, because it takes money out of your pocket. But I like what he says. And so for me, instead of saving my way to retirement, I want to save my way to cash flow. And I've personally been a part of several layoffs during the pandemic, and each one honestly came as a surprise that I, in hindsight, should have seen coming. But going forward, I want to try and mitigate those shocks as much as possible with continuing to have savings and a cash buffer just in case, but then really have cash flow from real estate and dividend yielding stocks. Another reason why I'm buying real estate is leverage. I mentioned this briefly before, but having a mortgage, when you partner with a bank, they're providing 80% of the money, and they're vetting the property via inspections and appraisals, and checking your finances to make sure you have enough liquidity to have in reserves in case there are vacancies. So banks are a lot more prudent and wise right now in their lending. So with me going 20% down, I can partner with them and I opted for 20% down instead of 25% down so that I could get a fourth property sooner rather than later. Another reason why I'm buying real estate is just to get rich slowly. You have the mortgage pay down, the market appreciation, and a reduced tax bill with depreciation that you can factor into your rental properties. Another reason why I'm going to start buying long-term buy and holds, and I haven't watched the whole thing, but there's a guy on Bigger Pockets that has done over 600 flips. And he says, I wish I had kept all 600 instead of doing flips. So he does flips, but now he's transitioned to doing BRRRR deals. And the last reason I want to buy long-term buy and hold real estate is I want to unlock the equity in my house. Some people, it's just sitting there, and it is prudent to have a paid off house, but another calculated risk I'm taking is that before hyperinflation hits, the smartest thing you can do is to get into as much long-term debt as possible. And so I want to get a return on the equity in my house. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So long-winded version of why I'm buying real estate, but now I want to talk about the how. So the first thing is I just recently did a cash out refi on our house after doing flips for the last 3 years. And then we finally finished our own house, increasing its in value. And so we went through and did a cash out refi back in the fall of this year, or of 2021. Technically we're in 2022. And so that is where the bulk of our funds came from to purchase these properties. So now I want to show you another screen of why I am buying, or how I'm buying real estate. So I came across this guy's blog. His name's Eric, and it's rentalincomeadvisors.com. And I'll link to this in the video description as well, so you can read this article. But basically the article is the best rental property markets in 2021. And he has this graphic here that I really liked. Let's see if I can get this to work. Maybe not. There, that's a little bit better. So in this graphic, he's got a bunch of different metrics that he is considering. For me, the home price for the amount of rent that you can get at $1,000 a month was a big one. Memphis is, just about $100,000, so price to rent ratio of 8.4. But I liked that it had low property taxes because in a high inflation or hyperinflationary environment, jurisdictions are going to raise taxes, and so I wanted to hopefully try and stay as low as possible. Same goes for state income tax, capital gains tax. One thing I was looking at was just population growth, job growth, and so it's steady, but it's not booming. And you also want to try and be in a landlord-friendly environment if at all possible. Obviously, avoid flood risk if you can, and then you can look at some of these other risks. I grew up in Cleveland, in the Cleveland area, but my wife, she just isn't very comfortable with Cleveland. Feels like there's a lot of crime there, so that kind of ruled out Cleveland from the start. Although they have pretty great properties and great rent to price ratios, and so then I was also looking at Birmingham, and I'm on a buyer's list for just properties here in Salt Lake. And one of the properties that came through was an out-of-state one in Birmingham, and it was something like $38,000 for $1,000 a month rent. And I'm like, wow, that is insane. That is so high. As I was digging into Birmingham, though, they supposedly it takes 90 days to evict a tenant, whereas in other markets and Memphis, you can begin the eviction process almost right away and technically have people out close to about 30 days. So that was a big thing with me, and for me, I'm okay with less growth. These hybrid markets have better, healthier growth, and that's due to nice weather and jobs going there. But in exchange for that, you have lower rents, but you have better appreciation. And so I was okay with that. An example of a low growth cash flow only market. I mentioned I lived in Cleveland. We lived in a suburb, and my parents bought a brand new house. And 10 years later, I think when they went to sell the house, it was almost the exact same value as when they bought it, but it has strong cash flow in that market. So not a lot of appreciation, but you get good cash flow. Another thing that I did for analyzing which market I wanted to go to was I went on realtor.com, and I'm here, but so I had Memphis, and I took all the single family listings versus multifamily, because eventually I want to get into multifamily for economies of scale and cost segregation studies and a bunch of other things. And so I figured, okay, I'm in a real estate mastermind group that we meet once a week, and some of the guys, they're ready to buy more properties, but there just isn't a ton of inventory. And so I wanted to make sure I was moving into a market that had a healthy amount of both, but not too many multifamilies as well, as weird as that might sound. And so, yeah, this is what this is. So basically 4.5% of the total inventory available is multifamily, which is pretty healthy across all the different markets. Okay. Another course that I went through and helped me land on Memphis, and I'll link to this, is found on Udemy, and it compares Memphis to other markets using this guy's metrics, and it ticked a lot of the boxes that I had. And these numbers are a little outdated. So I think I did this like a year ago or so. But you can see a little bit of population decline, but these other things like income growth are decent. House value prices are decent. Again, not super expensive. The trend for crime, is relatively stable. And going down, so that's better. Lower crime rate, so decrease of 100 points. And then job growth, and again, you can see I did this last year so it would have been, I think, 2020, so kind of in the middle of the pandemic, and pretty much every market was having a decline. So I haven't redone these numbers, but you can go through the guy's course, and then I'm going to share this spreadsheet as well. And here are some of the links that I use to search for each of these things. So that'll help you to find a market that works for you as well. Another reason why I chose Memphis is it has low to no snow, so you don't really have to worry about snow too much. Lower crime than Cleveland. And then a big thing is just jobs. You have St. Jude's, which is a huge cancer research hospital there in Memphis. They're doing something like $9 billion in investment into cancer research. So essentially they're never going anywhere. Then there's other great things about Memphis. You have the new University of Memphis, which is actually really great for a potential for me and others that might go there for student rentals. My realtor, he said, you can incorporate all the utilities, the maintenance into rent, and then just have parents co-sign. And when you do that, you're able to get top dollar rent because the students are able to just focus on their school studies, and they don't have to worry about maintaining the property or anything. And there was actually one right at the southern end of the campus of University of Memphis that I was looking at, but our realtor walked through it. And after walking through it, we decided to pass because it was just really janky how they had the layout and everything. But you can get crazy awesome rents that way. Another reason why I picked Memphis, you have Nike, Amazon, FedEx, UPS. They all have distribution centers there, or they're headquartered there, like in the case of FedEx. And so strong job base that isn't likely to go anywhere. And the reason why is population wise, Memphis is in the middle of America. It's not geographically the middle, but population wise it is. So half to the east and half to the west. And so it's a good central point for distribution services and purposes. And of course, the Mississippi River is right there to help aid in transport. So I'm going to share a couple videos that I was shared by my realtor where to invest in Memphis. So the first one will show you good areas to invest based on your wants. And they break out the neighborhoods by class, so A, B, C, and D. And then the second video I watched as well, and this guy has several videos that he does on which areas to invest in. The bigger gentleman, his name is Dean. He's actually one of the realtors I reached out to from Bigger Pockets, but just wasn't ever able to get on a call with him to get him to send me properties, but he may work for others if you're able to get in touch with him. And they also have property management. And so when investors are looking to sell their properties, they send it out to the investor list. And so that might be a good way for you to pick up properties for sale as well. By the way, they talk about a few markets. I like the 38118 market, the zip code. It's and then you also have houses further north of Memphis that are cheaper and they have bigger lots, and you can find completely remodeled homes for the same price as not as nice ones, more central to Memphis. But then the rental demand and the prices for those rentals aren't as high up there. And so you just have to weigh that as you contemplate which properties you want to pick up. I'm going to see if I can, maybe I'll note a couple other zip codes that I like as well. Okay, so property characteristics spreadsheet. So I'm going to show you the spreadsheet I use to help run the numbers, and this is the one that I use. So I took out the addresses, but you can, and I'll share this link as well. This came from Eric, this rental income advisor site. You plug in the rent and the condition of the property, and I'm going to show you here how to get the taxes. So I'll pull up a property, for example, undecided one. So this application is what I was using from my realtor to see if I liked a property or not. Just looking at this, I'm going to guess it's further north. Yep, that's further north. So this is Memphis. This is more central south, and this is more north. The reason I guessed it was further north is just a bigger house. It looks like bigger lots, more trees. But to find the taxes on a property, you're going to come here and add the annual city tax and county tax, and you'll come in to here and you'll just add those together. So you can see I just equal sign and plus the 2 property taxes. Insurance premium. This property was purchased for about 130,000. So about 1% ish is the insurance premium that you'll have for each of your properties. Just depends on where they are. So just a rough estimate. If you don't know the insurance numbers, you can just put 1%, excuse me. I just defaulted to 10%, but technically I think the properties I'm signing up for, the property manager is doing it for 8% for each one. So you can adjust those as you need. And then, yeah, I'm just doing 5% of the 3 property managers I talked to. Vacancy, they're experiencing about 3% in Memphis, but you can be conservative when you're running your numbers. And then, of course, if you're going to take on some of the utility fees and buying a townhouse or a condo where they have a HOA, you put that there. And then during vacancy, if you have lawn or snow care costs, you can enter those numbers here as well. So yeah, you just put in the purchase price, and if you're just buying something that's already rehabbed and remodeled or in pretty good shape, you pretty much just leave that after rehab value of the property the same. Closing costs, if you're not going to do any rehab, are typically about 5% of the purchase price. So you put that there, and then, yeah, you just fill out the rest. So are you going to be paying cash or getting a mortgage? What's your down payment and your term length? And then for me, in Memphis, the mortgage rate for 20% down is 4% exactly. 25% down, I could get a mortgage rate of 3.625%. So yeah, you plug all those in, and then you come here and you can see the numbers of everything. So you have your rent, what your mortgage principal and interest are. This repairs and maintenance depends on what you selected here for whether or not it was newly renovated or it's just in good condition or needs a ton of work. And based on that selection, it adjusts this repairs and maintenance. Obviously, the newer, the lower the repairs and maintenance, and the older, the higher the repairs and maintenance. And then those property taxes are just divided by 12, and your insurance by 12, and your property management is just based on the fee. And yeah, your vacancy. So I'm going to change these back to 10% because that's what I had it at before. So you come here and you can see the monthly cash flow, principal pay down, and then those added together. What I was hoping for and looking at was about 300 a month for cash flow for each of the properties. And then the other thing that I was looking at was really this cash on cash return. At a bare minimum, I was looking and hoping to get at least 10% cash on cash. So cash on cash, if you're not familiar with that, is if you buy something for $100,000 and after all your expenses, if you're aiming for a 10% cash on cash, you would make $10,000 in a year. So you buy something for 100, after all expenses, it makes 10,000. That would be at 10% cash on cash. In these scenarios, this one, say it was $100,000 purchase price, you would make $14,000 on your property after all your expenses. So these were the main hurdles: cash on cash, and then monthly cash flow. In commercial multifamily, so 5 units plus, they say on a per unit basis, you should have at least $100 per month per unit. But seeing as these are single family properties and they just have 1 unit, so higher vacancy risk, I wanted to have quite a bit more buffer, 2 to 3 times more buffer. So just keep that in mind as you're running the numbers on your real estate. Another thing I was originally starting out looking for was like 3-bedroom units. I mentioned that real estate mastermind group. A lot of these guys have 1 and 2-bedroom units and houses and studio apartments, and to them, they're cheaper to turn and they rent out just as well as 3 and 4 bedroom houses and just as long. And people don't, if you're treating them nice and taking care of the property, that's not like they're just leaving right away. So all my units happen to be 2-bedroom units. I would actually prefer at least 3 bedrooms, but it's not a deal breaker if it's a 2-bedroom or even a 1-bedroom. I would consider a 1-bedroom in like a condo or a townhouse type scenario, be cheaper to get into it. I mentioned that Robert Kiyosaki, he has a board game called Cash Flow, and 1-bedroom unit's going to be a small deal in this game. He's got cards that are small deals and big deals, and so you can do small deals and do more of them, and as long as they cash flow and everything works, then you'll be good. So yeah. All right, on to the next thing. When you're talking to your realtor, if they're good, they'll ask you what you're looking for in a rental, i.e., do you want cash flow versus appreciation? And do you want something that needs work versus already remodeled? And they'll know the areas then that they'll send you properties to get notices on. When we started, I wanted to do burr properties right out the gate, but after discussing with my wife several times, I came to realize, like, it finally dawned on me that for a very first out of state property, even though we've done flips here in state and we've done cosmetic ones to full guts and needing to do 6-figure plus rehabs, her tolerance just wasn't there for the very first one being out of state. So we ended up offering on remodeled houses that already had all those CapEx issues addressed, like the roof and the windows and the plumbing and the electrical and the flooring. And so, yeah, as long as those things are basically done in the last 7 years, then those fixes should last a while. The roofs, the windows, the furnaces, those types of things. Yes, doing a burr, does maximize your ROI. But doing this route at least gets us in the game and gets us started with those small deals to see how we like it. And it also allows me to get set up with more of my core team members, like my realtor, the property manager, lenders, and of course, general contractors to handle any issues that are there. Okay. So let's see, I'm just looking at my notes. It looks like I've covered a lot of this stuff. Okay. So next thing you want to do is start to build out your rockstar team. So the first thing I did is I went to Bigger Pockets, and I just typed in Memphis, and you go Memphis, Tennessee, and then it takes you through this process of what kind of properties you're looking to buy and how soon you're looking to buy and what your max price is, because then this puts them in buckets of which agents want to work with which type of people. And then you put in what things you're looking for, and then you put in your contact info and hit submit. And then once you do that, it will obviously send your information off. When I did this, I reached out to 3 real estate agents here on Bigger Pockets. You can also come here, and I did Memphis Burr Realtor, just in the users. I think I came here, real estate agents, and you just type in this, and you can see this is one of the realtors actually that I interviewed, or property managers. but they do burr properties, and there are, you know, several others. And this guy is an investor looking to find burr agents and stuff. So this is one way to build out your rock star team. Like I said, I reached out to 3 realtors. 2 responded initially, and then 1 panned out. And if you're looking to find something in Memphis, I would reach out to Dylan Johnson at 901 Realtors, and I'll share his contact info in the description below. But for me, considering the time difference and never having worked with me before, Dylan went out on a limb to talk with me, answer my questions. He walked a property that I mentioned, that student housing one, for free, even though he usually charges. And he did that just to show good faith, and that he wanted me to be successful and earn my business. But he's a personable guy, like pretty easygoing, easy to laugh. But he's helped out-of-state real estate investors buy hundreds of properties, and he manages for his family some properties as well out there in Memphis, and he knows which areas rent well. And he can help you with rental numbers, but obviously smartly caveats it with doing your own research on what works well. He pointed me to rentometer.com, which I love. I used to use that previously. So if you're not sure on how to find a good rental and what the rents are, just go to rentometer.com. Let's see, maybe I can pull this up real quick. And so you'll plug in the address, select the number of beds and baths, how many bathrooms, and then it defaults to 12 months. You can just leave that. The search radius, Dylan said, go to half a mile, and then you'll update the building type. You have apartment, condo, or house duplex, and then you'll just click analyze, and it'll show you the rents for a property and how many properties within that radius and that time frame rented. And then you can select to do a proper report. Let's see if I can do this real quick for you. Come over here. So let's just do an example one. Let's see, let's do this one in Layton, Utah. I'll do a summary, I'll do any, do a half mile, do a house, click analyze. So it says not enough results. And so this is where you can change it to auto and hopefully get some results back. So this is what you would look at on Rentometer if you're doing like a summary result. Otherwise, it would just show like one column with the average, median, and these percentiles. It'd show those as well. So let's see if I can do like analyze like this, just to give you a better example. So this is what I'm typically looking at. So this is 10 3-bedroom houses within 12 months, but it's a 3-mile radius. So you have the subject property here, and then you've got properties decently close to it, but then you got some far away and right by the freeway. So that might not be a good, selection of rentals to help you gauge whether or not you can get rents on this property. So that's why you stick with, closer properties to see if this will work. So green are lower price properties, red are higher price properties, and blue are comparable properties. Then you can do this view report thing, and it will show you more detail on the property and where those addresses are. And then obviously you click on this and it'll take you to potentially the actual property, so you can see what it looks like and its details. So Rentometer's pretty helpful in that regard. So yeah, this takes a lot of the guesswork out, but I just wanted to show that to you real quick. Okay. So Dylan's also been great to work with. His company, they know a lot of the contractors in the area because they've been there so long. He's even offered to refer me to his handyman for any issues I might have. He has referred me to several lenders and property managers, and he set me up with this app to help decide on properties and to vet them. So with this application, it's nice. You can favorite, you can possible for more research, or you can reject. Then you can build your own custom folders. Obviously, you can see the photos of a property. Obviously, this one just doesn't have a inside view, but yeah, you can see it's a little further north. Dylan told me basically anything in this section and this section, it's too close to the river for flooding, but more importantly for me, they're just older and sketchier neighborhoods. And so basically, if any of these properties were in any of this loop, I would just skip over them and just reject the property. Another thing you'll want to do, at least initially, is just do the street view just to see how it looks. And actually looks like a pretty decent area, nice big park. So I did that on each of these properties I was looking at. And then I would also, read the description, and sometimes they'll have the rents that are actually on the property. So you can kind of gauge whether that's palatable or not for you, especially if they're locked into a longer term lease. And sometimes you offer on properties that, like two of my properties, they are already rented out. It's nice because then it takes some of the guesswork out, but you can hopefully just cash flow right away, and you just set your property manager up to collect the rents. But yeah, good details. So that house was built in 2004, so a newer house, not brand new, but newer. So yeah, those are some of the things I mentioned. The taxes already. You'll want to watch out for association fees if you're trying to avoid that, like HOA, but sometimes HOAs are nice. They take care of stuff. So something to consider. Another thing I would do is go to this valuations tab, and you can see that there's quite a range of values from 60,000 on the low end all the way up to 134. So it seems like they're perhaps on the higher end, but it's just been on the market for 0 days. So yeah, these are some of the things I considered. Let's see what else. Community reports. Sometimes this will show rents as well, and then you can plug in some of the numbers here for your property. So yeah, let's see. Get this back to 115. Calculate payments. Oh, I'm going to put in an interest rate, and it'll show you your rough payments. But again, this calculator, it'll do those payments for you. So, okay, I'm just trying to get through this. My throat's getting tired. Okay. All right, on to the lender information. My realtor suggested a couple lenders. I reached out to two of them, never heard from one of them. And then the other one I did, Ryan Guess. He and his team have been pretty good. Ryan has been a rock star. He referred me to two competitive insurance companies to get landlord policies, homeowner insurance policies for my properties. And so I got some good quotes there. I'll share Ryan's information and the other lenders' information as well, just in case you guys want to reach out to him. But with your homeowner's insurance, you'll want to try on your rental properties, get quotes from your current personal residence homeowner's insurance, because they might be able to bundle you and just on volume, give you a better quote. I use Geico, and I've used them for years and have stuff bundled with them, but on the first property that I closed on, they were so high. They were $1,800 a year. And I'm like, that's more than my house is. And my house is worth way more than these properties. And so I ended up going to these other two lenders, and I'll share their information as well, email and phone numbers that you can reach out to. But they're way more competitive on pricing, so cheaper. And the one that I ended up going with, Heath Peterson, he and Talmadge, Heath and his company, they have triple the liability coverage that Geico and the other insurance company had. And they came in around $1,200 instead of $1,800 in comparison to Geico. So yeah, I would work with Heath, and you guys can reach out to your personal insurance company and this other guy from Liberty Mutual. And then my property manager, he was recommended to me from my realtor. So if you find a good rock star team member, they'll put you in touch with the right people. The spreadsheet that I use to vet property management is right here, and I'll share a link to this. Again, this comes from Eric at Rental Income Advisors. So thank you, Eric, if you ever see this video. But he's got good notes, and then here are the notes that I have on each of the three property managers that I interviewed. Yeah, so they all have their pluses and minuses. You just have to think for yourself which one you want to go with. Obviously, the more established and more reviews and better processes, they might be more expensive and have longer term contracts that you lock you into. And then, yeah, you go down from there. Obviously, you get what you pay for and you take a chance, but hopefully it works out for you. I'm going to work with James and Kanisha Martin. These guys, they do have annual contracts, and they're not the cheapest, but they're also not the most expensive. And they manage rental for themselves to the tune of about $2 million. So that's good to hear. And they also manage rentals for my realtor's broker, who has rentals with them. They have about 300 to 400 units that they manage, and they've been doing it for like 2 decades. And James, who I worked with primarily, he knows the market well, answered all my questions completely. And so I'm going to give him a try. And then if that doesn't work out, I think I'll go with Reedy, who is more expensive, but established and also has processes and employees like JK Holmes does. As far as contractors go, I haven't had to work on that just yet. That may be this week though. Like I said, I closed on my property on Friday, and yeah, tomorrow James should be picking up the keys and starting to get quotes on flooring and countertops and appliances and all these different things that we want to do on this last property. But I'm confident that him and my realtor will be able to refer me to some good contractors. So yeah, there's that. And then just wrapping up, 2 more things. As I was considering buying a rental, I was trying to think, okay, do I get an LLC or do I do an umbrella policy? And I'm going to link to another one of Eric's blog posts that discusses in depth the pros and cons of both. And honestly, I read a bunch of articles, but this one was the most comprehensive and properly frames everything objectively in terms of which one you should do. So do your own research and talk with your accountants and attorneys, try and figure out what's going to work best for you. And then last thing, overnighting earnest money deposits. I used USPS, and I'll continue to use them. They are in the $20 range, whereas I did US or UPS, and they were in the $40 range. And I'm complaining here in my notes, but basically, no wonder they need bailouts, because they are government subsidized, but because of inflation and official inflation being understated, they have lower costs, but then they cost the taxpayer a bunch of money with bailouts. So anyways, if you're going to overnight checks, just use USPS. They're cheaper than UPS. So I will make sure to include all these notes in the description. Hopefully this has been helpful. Leave a comment down below in the comment section if you have any questions for me. And good luck in your investing. Toodles.